Good day, everyone. Thank you for joining today's Docker webinar. A few housekeeping items before we get started. As a reminder, this session is being recorded, and a copy of the recording will be sent out a few days after the webinar. We will take questions throughout the session, so please drop those in the Q&A window located in the lower right of your screen, and our speakers will address them as they come up. I would like to introduce to you today's speakers, Donnie Hall, Technical Alliance Manager at Docker, and Rob Leach, Senior Director, Global Cloud Transformation at Avanade. Donnie, I will now turn things over to you.
What we're going to talk about, everybody, is we're going to talk about the challenges that come with facing the modern IT enterprise in dealing with their legacy application infrastructure. And then we're going to look at how we can address that challenge and help organizations modernize that infrastructure into a cloud-first cloud world. We'll look at an example around modernization impact, which is going to be MetLife and the Modernizing Traditional Applications POC that we conducted with MetLife. We'll talk about what that application modernization journey looks like. And then finally, we'll talk about how to get started on your own journey towards application modernization. So, a little bit about us. Avanade is, as it says, is a leading provider of technology and managed services with expertise on the Microsoft stack. Avanade is over 30,000 strong with 18,000 certified Microsoft professionals and is a leading service provider in the Microsoft area. Docker is the leading container platform for IT pros and developers. Docker is the original developer of the containers as a service platform and has been working closely with Avanade and Microsoft to help organizations modernize their traditional applications into a cloud-first world. And of course, Microsoft is the leading enterprise provider of hybrid cloud and OS and enterprise solutions and technologies, not only here in the US, but around the world. So let's look at cloud adoption patterns. And so, Rob, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Donnie, and thanks everyone for joining today. I think before we get into some of the specifics around app modernization, it's important to first understand kind of what's happening in the marketplace. This is a result of some survey data we've collected earlier this year, and there's several things that I see when I look at this information. Certainly over the past 12 to 18 months, clients have moved beyond the question of why should I adopt the cloud, and they're really now focused on how they should adopt and what they should do first. And I think because of that, clients are really looking to accelerate their journey to the cloud platform. The data here shows some insights around what's happening not only in the next 12 months, but really over the next 36 months. And this particular data was collected from over 800 global IT decision makers. If we break this down, the first thing that we see is that clients are moving their on-premises systems and environments to the cloud, and they're doing that now. Specifically, the amount or the percentage of on-prem data centers will be reduced by roughly half over the next 12, maybe 18 months. So certainly folks out in the industry are looking to adopt and take advantage of cloud platforms by first looking at those on-premises data centers. The next thing that we see is that the move to cloud is accelerating, and it's doing so with the growth of infrastructure as a service, or IaaS. That is often referred to as the lift and shift. Take some of your existing applications, environments, and shift them as is to the cloud. There's also some approaches that look at taking platform as a service, or PaaS capabilities from the cloud providers and adopting those applications by revising, refactoring, and rebuilding them using those platform services, certainly improving and modernizing them in that way. The other thing that we see, if we look a little bit further out beyond the next 12 to 18 months, is we see that applications in the hosted data centers start to shift to the cloud. You see that kind of on that point number 3 there. And that's really because over the 3-year time horizon, existing contracts with hosted data center providers start to expire and likely will not be renewed. So those existing applications and environments and platforms in those hosted data centers will move to the cloud. And then finally, we see that the PaaS adoption, right, the platform services, continues to grow in the next 3 years, but the infrastructure as a service capability remains flat. And I think the last point I'll make is that even 36 months out or longer, there's still a hybrid environment of on-prem data centers, hosted data centers, but applications, more and more applications running in the cloud. And that's really what we're going to talk about today, is how do you take some of those existing applications that you have, maybe your legacy or traditional applications, and get them to the cloud in a way that's quick, easy, but most importantly, saves you money and allows you to run better, faster, and cheaper than what you're doing today. So let's see. Melanie, can you go to the next slide, please? Thanks. So if we look at some of the data specifically around why clients are moving to the cloud, as I mentioned, it's really delivering capabilities that allow them to reduce the amount of time that they're spending developing and testing and getting those feature enhancements and changes into production environments where they can capitalize on competitive advantage, market insights, accelerating their delivery time to the market so that they can be the first to drive new features, to gain new market share, certainly grow the top line of their business. But many companies are also looking to increase their innovation, to do things in a way that they have not been able to do before, drive that innovation, invest money into research and development. Certainly the ability to do that in a way that adapts and adheres to ever-changing market conditions is a struggle for everyone that's in the technology space, because the technology is changing so quickly and the market environments and the business conditions make the industries extremely competitive. Those that can move faster and adapt and change to new opportunities, emerging business needs, are the ones that will win. So we need to move faster. We also need to operate much more efficiently so that the friction in systems and environments moving from new innovation and ideas to complete capability released and available to drive new growth for businesses, but also do that in a way that reduces the bottom line, lowers the cost to operate. That's when we talk about better, faster, and cheaper, how we can help clients move those existing applications, the services, the capabilities that they're providing not only to other parts of the business, but then that business is providing to the external stakeholders and customers and clients, allowing them to be more competitive, more agile, more innovative in this ever-changing and competitive world that we live in. So how do they do that? Today, quite frankly, it's a struggle. About 80% of IT budgets today are spent on maintenance of existing legacy applications that have been written or built many months, often years, and sometimes even decades ago. And the maintenance budgets keep many organizations from then driving innovation, being able to go find new ways to crack market opportunities, to bring features and capabilities to grow the top lines of their business. So if there were a way to drop and reduce that maintenance cost and increase the innovation, that would certainly be something that I think would allow a higher value from IT organizations to the business, but also for those businesses to become much more digital, much more competitive, much more innovative in the spaces that they play in the markets that they compete in. But that simply is very, very tough to do. So how can we unlock and start that process? Use a catalyst to realize some initial cost savings. And that's really what the Modernizing Traditional Applications, or MTA program, is all about. We know that environments today are very complex. On average, there's roughly 3 or 4 cloud platforms that clients are using, many different operating systems, applications that are running across different types of systems and languages. And when we put all that together, it can become rather daunting and complex. So what really is the focus of trying to move some of those initial applications to the cloud? And why can't we do that today? Well, today, many of those applications were written in a way that the architecture is rigid. I would actually say that in many cases, the folks that wrote those applications may no longer be at the company. So it would be risky and not only difficult to change, but much of the deployment and the code that supports those applications is unknown. The services that are provided by the application still need to be delivered, but the high risk and cost to making any changes to those applications is one that really is often met with a high level of challenge, and the processes and the systems simply just need to run and can't be risked with any downtime or outages. However, if there's a way to run those applications, maintain those applications, and deliver the services that those applications provide to the rest of the organization in a way that was cheaper and did so in a way that was much more efficient, that would certainly be a way to drive innovation and decrease the maintenance and cost for those legacy and traditional applications. What we want to share with you, and I'm going to turn it back to Donnie, is how MetLife, a very large insurance company, has cracked this code and how they've been able to drive as a catalyst using Docker and Avanade and Microsoft Azure platform to address this exact problem.
Great, thank you, Rob. So if we look at MetLife, so here's an example of an organization that actually has gone through this journey and has seen tremendous success by going down this, this modernization path. And most of us are probably familiar with MetLife as a brand. It is a global Fortune 500 company, well over 100 million customers, 500 billion in total assets today, about 63 billion in revenue in 2017. In fact, they're getting ready to turn 150 years old next year. So it's, in every sense, it's a traditional company, right? But also a company, as like a lot of traditional companies, they have a lot of traditional applications that they've had to manage and maintain, over several years, and in some instances even decades. So the way MetLife approached this is the first thing they did is they just selected one application. And in this particular instance, it was their do not call opt-out email application. This was a Linux-based application. It's not an exciting app, as MetLife would tell you, but it's with all the privacy and opt-out laws and the compliancy and regulations that are out there, it is critical actually to their business and the way that they interact with their customers. So they selected that one app. And then they went through the process of containerizing that application with Avanade. And so one of the great tools that we have as a part of the Docker platform is something called Image to Docker, which allows us to look at .NET or Java applications and help convert those or create the Docker files and the resources that you need to create that Docker container. In MetLife's case, that existing Java application only took 1 day to containerize. So once they've identified the application and they started the process, within 1 day they had the application as a Docker container. And then within one day they actually had that application up and running in Azure. So it only took them 24 hours to complete that process with this particular application. Now, to be fair, they did work closely with Avanade and Docker to make sure within the time that's allotted within the program that this was a good fit for that process, right? But once they went through that process of selecting the one app, the one day that it took to containerize, to convert that application into a Docker container, then they started looking at that technology stack. And then they asked themselves, what other solutions do we have? What other traditional solutions do we have running in our enterprise that this would apply to as well? Once they did that particular math, they realized that that same application, that email application that is critical to their business, that same exact technical stack is in use in almost 600 applications, 593 applications to be exact. And then they started doing the math to decide or figure out, well, what would it look like if we followed the same process that Rob talked about earlier? What would it look like if we applied the same process to these other 593 applications? And the results are pretty astounding. They speak for themselves. It would be a 70% reduction in virtual machines, a 67% reduction in the number of cores in use today, about a 10% utilization or increase in the average CPU utilization. So not only going to be doing literally more with less here, but at the end of all of this, it would be a 66% reduction in overall cost, just by looking at that one application stack that's in use on these 593 applications. If you take that same methodology and then you apply that across the full portfolio of applications that MetLife manages, this is only 10% of the full stack or the full application stack that they have. Now, when working with Avanade and Docker and Microsoft, when we look at the application landscape that's out there, we estimate that we could convert the majority of custom .NET Java applications that exist in the enterprise. Those are applications that are ripe to be converted into a Docker container using Docker Enterprise Advanced and to move to Azure. So we could look at these same types of savings here on just this one small slice of their application portfolio, and then we could apply that same math or those same metrics to the rest of the stack. So it's important when you're looking at the example of MetLife to be asking yourself, how do I apply this same methodology to our own environment, and what would those results look like for us? Rob, I'm going to go ahead and hand it back to you to kind of walk them through the application journey.
Great. Thanks, Donnie. You know, at Avanade, we really focus on driving innovation and helping clients see results at each step within their cloud journey. We often need to start with understanding the business, understanding the challenges that the business faces, and how we can help that business move faster, scale their capabilities and operations as they may expand into new markets, but certainly look at the economics, the ROI for investments, the total cost that it takes to maintain and deliver existing systems and applications. And specifically by teaming with Docker, partnering in this MTA program, we've been able to drive some very significant economic savings for clients like MetLife. When we do that, we're able to unlock some initial savings that allow clients to then accelerate their journey. And that cloud journey really considers what we talk about as 6 key elements. It's the applications that are needed to transform the company into a much more adaptive, flexible, agile organization so that they can react to the changing marketplace and needs of the lines of business that the IT organization supports. The infrastructure then needs to support those applications, and the applications and the infrastructure together then need to be run and operated and managed in a way that altogether brings value beyond what's being done today. The next pieces in the cloud transformation approach are critical because everything needs to be secure and needs to be compliant and managed and governed in a way to adhere to policy and regulatory concerns. But finally, all of those elements need to be tied together in a way that provides for the financial business case and the accountability and the visibility to the spend and the return on that spend that each of the applications and the systems and the platforms are providing back to the organizations that are consuming them. So when we think about all of those elements, the approach that we take is one that is application-led. And that's because those applications within an organization have their fingerprints on all the services and the capabilities that are provided to the organization. Whether those applications be in HR, in finance, in operations, in internal facing employee support, workforce productivity, external interfaces with clients and marketing. It could also be some internal data and analytics that allow for deeper insight to how organizations can run much more effective. All these applications work together to deliver the business and the operations for that business to provide the platform that allows that organization to really grow and enable and drive improvement to both the top line and the bottom line and drive that value back into their shareholders. So when we consider all the elements of a cloud journey, we look first at those applications because it's the applications that are providing the services and the value to the organization. And then those applications are supported by the infrastructure, the operations, the governance, the security, and the business case. If we drill that in a little bit further, what we see is a way to provide a very prescriptive and repeatable methodology in taking either the first step in a cloud journey or accelerating the cloud journey based on where a client may already be today. In many cases, the current environment and the business drivers set the foundation for what success looks like. What are the metrics and the measures that are needed to be produced, and how can technology, and specifically a cloud platform, provide support and delivery against those success factors? We then look to demonstrate with the MTA program the ROI that Donnie talked about from MetLife. Taking an initial application, getting that application into a Docker container, deploying it onto Azure, not only showing and demonstrating from a technology standpoint that it's very possible and capable to be done, but then comparing the value in the cost savings that can be realized, extrapolating that cost savings into the next round of capability and support that we provide in that cloud journey. I believe, Donnie, you're going to talk a bit more about what we're doing specifically with the MTA program and the POC work, and then we'll come back and we'll finish out more around the methodology when we design and deliver and run the applications once they're into the containers.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, I think when you look at the way that we approach this, I mean, we wanted to have, as Rob pointed out, something that is repeatable with all of our customers and allows customers to design and deliver and run those applications in a cloud-first type environment. Let's see, advance the slide. So the approach that we take with a customer whenever we look at how do we modernize these traditional applications, we want to look at for applications that are within a certain type of fit. You know, we look at the custom, whether that's a custom .NET or a Java application. We go through, we validate that that application can run as a container, and then we look at what that level of effort would take to move that there. We then, as we go and deliver that build, test, and deploy component, we do pre-stage that Azure environment. We have a set of templates that we use for both .NET and Java type workloads, And then again, as we use our tools such as image to Docker to containerize that, convert that application into a Docker container, and then move that to the Azure platform. After that, what we look at when we look at this methodology we have is we want to make sure customers are comfortable with not only Azure as the cloud destination, but the full Docker enterprise stack, and want to make sure that they understand, all the things that go into running and managing that solution. We want to make sure customers understand the Docker enterprise platform, the Docker engine, the orchestration, the universal control plane, what it means to run your own registry, and the advanced security tools and methods that comes with running containers as a service. I'm going to go ahead and hand it back to you, Rob.
Great, thanks, Donnie. I know we're going to get into a little bit more detail. So oftentimes the clients that we work with say, but I'm not sure which applications should be moved to the cloud or what applications are best suited to be put into containers. What we're showing here is some of the tooling and methodology that Avanad's created to help drive the rationalization for a broader application portfolio. Specifically, we look at applications and we evaluate them across a couple different dimensions. One is the technical complexity of the application, and the other is around the value that those applications deliver to the business, the number of users it supports, the type of services it provides. And we take all of that information and we compare it and drive it against the key success factors and the criteria for business success, the business outcomes, whether that be speed, scale, or cost savings, or some combination of all of them. We'll then determine which applications are best first movers for getting to the cloud. We then look at how those applications should be moved. Should they be lifted and shifted and rehosted in much like the infrastructure as a service capability? That's certainly one way. But I will say that many clients have found when they do that, they miss the governance and the compliance and the operational aspects. And often it can be more expensive to run those applications in the cloud. So it needs to be done in the right way. And that, again, comes back to the 6 elements that need to be considered when we help clients in their cloud transformation journey. Another way is to replace applications. Those applications that have services that can be provided from third-party vendors, software as a service capabilities. Things like Office 365 for mail and collaboration, Salesforce, Workday for HR, SAP for ERP types of capability. All third-party software as a service offerings in the marketplace today. But then there's a whole group of applications that can be modernized, refactored, rebuilt, revised. And it's those applications that need to continue to be improved and delivered back to the organizations with the services that the applications were originally built for. And it's those applications that we look at, along with some that can be rehosted and simply moved to the cloud, as great targets for containerization. Because as Donnie mentioned, and we'll talk about in a minute, getting those applications into containers and deployed onto the cloud, and specifically Azure platform, can realize some very, very significant cost savings that will allow an organization to then drive more of that innovation and accelerated modernization outcome. So one of the things that we do is work with clients to take a selection or a group or all of their applications in the portfolio, run it through what we call the application roadmap to cloud tool to then identify which applications are best suited for moving to the cloud, how they should move to the cloud, and then how we can apply the MTA program to then accelerate that cloud journey. As Donnie mentioned, we take one existing application, we convert that application to Docker Enterprise Edition in a container, and deploy that application onto modern infrastructure, so a cloud environment. It should be noted that we do this through a combination of Avanad consulting services, work with Docker, the Docker Enterprise Edition technology and capability, and deploy it onto the Microsoft Azure platform. We do that without making any change to source code. We take the application and source code as is, put that into a Docker container, on Docker Enterprise Edition, and again, deploy that into Azure so that it's running on a modern infrastructure. And that application is then modernized in a way that can be run, managed, and delivered to the business in a way that's much cheaper than it was before. This can be done extremely quickly, in the case of MetLife, within a day, and it can then drive a much better outcome that allows an organization to manage and maintain that application and set of services the application provides in a much more cost-effective manner, allowing the organization to shift their budgets from maintaining those applications to now being able to innovate and improve and accelerate that transformation journey. We then look at how do we take those initial applications, deploy them into the cloud environment. We want to look at how we can then put the right infrastructure and environment in place that supports the 6 elements that I talked about earlier. What is the security that's needed? What are the governance and policy issues about who can deploy, run, manage the cloud environments? What about the reporting, the chargeback and the showback, all the different elements that are needed to ensure that the right environment, networking, compute, storage, and all of those infrastructure components that are needed to support not only the initial applications, but the containers and delivering container as a service back to the organization can be put in place to deliver on the improvements and the results that we've just discussed. Donnie, I believe you want to spend maybe a little bit more time on the details around the Docker Enterprise Edition, and then we'll come back to just finish out the methodology and the flow.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rob. So as we've mentioned before, when you look at this application modernization journey, and you look specifically at MetLife, one of the things that MetLife, one of the decisions that they made early on, and a lot of our customers are making, is what's that platform going to be for their containers as a service, right? As you go down this modernization path. Docker Enterprise Edition is the container platform built for the enterprise. We built this knowing that customers not only want to build net new applications, which we have lots of folks doing, but we also want to be able to manage and orchestrate and do that lift and shift of those legacy applications. When you look at the Docker Enterprise Platform, this is the set of tools that will give you the capability of not only, like I said, modernizing those legacy applications, but creating net new ones, but also gives you the tools to manage and orchestrate your container as a service across your full enterprise. Some of the things that we've worked really hard on with a lot of our partners, such as Microsoft, specifically Microsoft and Microsoft Azure and other partners, is around this Docker certified infrastructure. When you run Docker on Azure, you can have the confidence of knowing that Docker has been certified for Azure and that that is a supported platform from both Microsoft and Docker. What's contained within the Docker Enterprise Platform is, first off, you have the Docker Container Engine. This provides you your security, your networking, your storage, the ability to distribute those containers, the container runtime itself, and that critical orchestration that's going to be taking place. How do we manage containers at scale? It's one thing to run a few, 5 or 6 containers or even a few dozen containers. It's a completely different thing to run containers, several hundred or even several thousand containers across your organization. And that's where we get into that integrated life cycle and that management of that. And that's something the Docker Enterprise Platform provides for you. Important security things such as policy management, content trust and verification, the private image registry, the ability to sign and certify and deploy only those containers that are trusted within your organization, and to be able to understand and control who does and does not have access to those containers, right? How do we the application and cluster management, the way that we secure the access and the user management from there. And more importantly, advanced security scanning, the ability to secure and scan and continuously monitor those containers at every stage of your DevOps pipeline to ensure that what you're running is both signed and trusted, but also the most up-to-date container available, and if not, give you a path of remediation. Additionally, Dockers work really hard, as we said earlier, of working with our partners, and we want to make sure that not only do we have Docker certified containers that you could pull down from trusted vendors such as Microsoft, whether that's for Windows Server or SQL Server, but we also want to make sure that Docker integrates with the tools and the systems that you already are using within your environment. So if you are a Microsoft Azure customer and you're currently using OMS, OMS is not only container aware, but it can run specific reports against your Docker environment, the monitoring of that environment, the ability to integrate with external content, certificate authorities, the ability to integrate with LDAP or Active Directory, and other types of storage solutions. So all in all, what the Docker Enterprise Platform gives you is that ability and that trust to know that this is enterprise ready. There are enterprises already, such as MetLife, who are using this in production in for mission critical applications on modern platforms such as Azure, and you can deploy this today without having to change out everything that you're already using. You don't have to get rid of your monitoring, your authentication, all those other things. This will work with your existing environment. Rob, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to you.
Great, thanks, Donnie. As I mentioned a bit about the app rationalization of a portfolio, taking those initial applications that are best suited to get to the cloud, putting them into Docker containers, getting them deployed onto Azure so you can deliver those applications and the services within them to the business in a way that is much cheaper than what you're doing today. That allows you to take and shift some of your IT budgets to more innovation, new projects, other uses, and you can also accelerate those savings and the return on the investment to get those applications into containers through the use of a container factory. So one of the things that we've done with our capability is to provide the ability to take hundreds and thousands of applications through a container factory to very quickly deliver those applications back to you in a way that can be packaged and containerized for quick deployment and accelerated cost savings. The migration framework looks at not only the team that's in place to do this work, but putting the migration framework together with Docker patterns, best practices, and base images, all supported by a very proven and robust Docker methodology and reference architectures. That factory is one that we love to use because it allows us to accelerate the savings and the value that this program can deliver and provide the next level of capability that has really plagued many IT organizations at the enterprise level. When we then are able to get that engine rolling, to start spinning that flywheel, we can then look to the ongoing run and the support in the managed services to drive that incremental app innovation. However, we need to find a way to get started. And so it's the MTA program and the work that we're doing with Docker, and Avanade, and Microsoft together to unlock that first step, to showcase that first app, to deliver that first set of cost savings that can then be plowed back to drive additional innovation. From there, certainly the ability to then deploy that application into production environments, to further refactor the application, to decompose the application into microservices, to drive more innovation, to augment, change the application in a way that provides additional services and features through perhaps a DevOps Lifecycle, through a modern engineering platform that allows for accelerated identification of features and delivery of those enhancements and capabilities back out through those applications, or simply just continuing to maintain and deliver those applications, but at a much cheaper cost than what you're doing today. And so it's those paths of innovation that are readily accessible after you can unlock and take that first step by using the MTA program as a catalyst. If we then look at this a bit more holistically, there's several different entry points that can be accessed. Certainly, maybe some folks and companies have already done work with Docker, and that's fantastic. They want to just accelerate some of the initial cost savings that they may be realizing. They may want to go straight to leveraging the container factory so they can accelerate the dollar savings by using Docker containers and Docker Enterprise Edition. Many others may not really be sure of what applications are best suited, so they need to start kind of at the beginning and look at their application portfolio, looking at the roadmap and which applications are best suited, high value first mover targets. But yet others may have already kind of assessed some of that, and they just really want to demonstrate and show the value of using this type of capability and technology to then build a further business case and demonstrate that return that they can be realized by using this particular program. So regardless of where you are on your journey, or if you haven't even started that journey, the way to really drive the value of IT back into the business, to realize cost savings, to be able to move an organization to run and operate better, faster, and cheaper than what's being done today, is to tap into these capabilities, tap into this technology, and leverage the great experience that Docker and Avanade and Microsoft have pulled together and delivered to folks like MetLife and many, many others. So I know we're going to take some questions, and happy to answer some of that. But before I wrap up, I do want to say that there's a great capability here across the three companies, Microsoft, Docker, and Avanade. We have tremendous amount of success in delivering these applications, existing applications, whether they be Linux, Java applications, Windows.NET applications, or some combination of. Getting those applications into a Docker Enterprise Edition container without any change to the source code, deploying that container into Azure in a modern infrastructure, and realizing immediate and significant cost savings that can then be extrapolated and accelerated through the use of container factories and expand your cloud infrastructure and environment to drive that cloud transformation and deliver on the digital innovation that many businesses need today to be competitive in the marketplace. So I would strongly suggest and recommend that everyone seriously consider the program, contact both Dr. Avanade, myself, Donnie, and others, and how we can help you and work with you to start the journey and then accelerate the results that we're seeing with clients like MetLife and many others. I think with that, Donnie, if there's any other comments or last points, I think we can certainly take some questions as well.
No, Rob, I think you said it perfectly. We look forward to any questions that the folks in attendance might have for us.
Yes, if anyone has any questions, I haven't seen any come through on the Q&A window, but if you do have questions, now would be the time to post them. Again, the Q&A window is located in the lower right of the screen. We'll wait a few moments here to see if any questions come in for Donnie or Rob. Oh, okay, just one popped up. Let me grab it here. Here's one that came through. Let's see, here we go. In a Windows environment, which apps are usually the best fit to containerize?
Well, this is Donnie. At a high level, with the MTA POC program we've been looking at, we've been generally starting within an organization, we start looking first at custom apps. Whenever you look at off-the-shelf apps, it doesn't mean we can't containerize those. They just might take a little bit longer. There might be a higher level of effort. But the custom .NET apps tend to be the ones that most organizations start with. Probably the lowest hanging fruit around there is going to be like your IIS type apps, those web applications. One customer that we work with had your kind of your standard web application. It had some IIS servers on the front end. It had a SQL server on the back end. With Microsoft and Avanade was able to containerize or convert into Docker containers the IIS servers, the IIS apps up front, and left SQL as a VM at that time, and then moved everything to Azure. In that particular, POC, they went from an average cost of around $3,800 for, all 10 concurrent users down to about $1,500 for 30 concurrent users. So it was almost a 60% reduction in costs and a 300% performance increase. Now today, kind of going forward, Microsoft said that, they'll support SQL 2017 as a container. So, in the future, we can even go and take things, traditionally, which we would have saved till last. We can start containerizing those SQL servers, for instance, both on Windows and Linux. Hopefully that answered the question.
And we have another one here. What's the best first step to take now?
Well, we always talk about, and Rob, I'm going to have you kind of jump in as well from a services perspective. But from a Docker perspective, we always say look at your application portfolio, right? So if you're looking at modernizing those traditional applications, I'll just kind of pick on the Microsoft side of the house first, right? If you have servers that are, it's very common for Rob and I to have conversations with folks who are still running Server 2003, even some, Server 2008 still probably out there. It's not end of life just yet. Those tend to be the low-hanging fruit, right? Because one is already has already hit the end of life, and another one is coming up on end of life. So I would first look at those. We've even run to a few folks that are running Server 2000, but at the end of the day, when you look at your application portfolio, what are the oldest applications you have? Because those tend to have the highest costs, both in old hardware and virtualization licenses and custom support agreements. I would go through that particular portfolio first. I guess, Rob, when you're talking to clients, how do you help them prioritize as well?
Yeah, I think certainly, if you're looking for some very quick, immediate wins, we can look at some of those applications that may be, higher cost. I would take a bit more holistic approach to understand where, a client is in their journey, focused on what those business, drivers and outcomes need to be, and then optimize, the right sequence of steps and capabilities that we could work together on to deliver, maximum outcome at each step along that journey. So, it varies a bit. There's kind of some standard things that we've seen fairly consistently, but it's always an application-led approach, and it's one that we're able to, apply this type of technology and the program to unlock some very real and immediate value that can then be used as the catalyst to accelerate broader transformation.
Yeah, and the only thing I think I would add to that in my earlier comments is that when you go down this journey, right, and you're looking at, which applications makes the most sense, I think there's always a tendency or a desire to tackle the biggest application, right? This is the one that is causing us the most pain. And while the desire is understandable, it probably makes sense to look at, what can we consume first, that crawl, walk, run methodology. So I would say be realistic in your expectations on what you can achieve within a certain amount of time and what you can learn from those first few attempts that you can then apply towards, the other overall broader modernization approach. And then in the chat window, we did have somebody ask if containers from other cloud providers can also be integrated. So without knowing which other cloud providers or those other container platforms, the answer I would say to that is that a Docker container is fully portable. That is the beauty of Docker containers, right? So whether that container is on-prem, running Docker Enterprise on Windows or, say, Linux, or running Docker Enterprise in Azure, you can move those containers back and forth. You can even have a situation where, and we have a lot of customers who are talking to us today about, they're going to have multiple cloud providers. And part of the beauty of the Docker platform is that it provides you that ability to have that hybrid approach, both for on-prem and in the cloud or multiple clouds, and yet it's still just a Docker container. So you can move those containers across providers using the Docker toolset.
Okay, I think that is the last question that we had come through. So with this, we'll go ahead and conclude the webinar. Thank you, Donnie, and thank you, Rob. Just a reminder that this session was recorded and a copy will be sent out to you. And please be sure to register for upcoming Docker webinars at docker.com/webinars, and also check out docker.com/events for upcoming customer events. We thank you again for joining us and hope you have a great day. Thank you, everyone.